What up? Welcome to the episode takeover of the Dealer Talk podcast. Very excited to have this first takeover episode. Mr. Arthur Castillo is taking on the Dealer Talk show and has opted to interview Erik Nelson and myself. So we're very excited for this episode because Arthur was the first guest to show us some love on online when we first started the podcast back in August of 2018. And when Erik and I were talking about this version, if you will, or this episode of having a guest kind of take over the show, it was it just made sense, right? That he should be the person to do it. So we're very excited to have him on. We're very excited to share this episode with all of you. And hopefully there's some takeaways. And we're also looking forward to kind of making this part of the seasons as we continue to, do the show. So check it out. Let us know what you think. And as usual, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to share this episode, share this podcast with somebody that can benefit from the information so that they can take it back to the dealer and implement in their day-to-day. All right, so let's just get into it. Here we go. Episode takeover, Arthur Castillo. Let's roll.
All right, welcome to Dealer Talk Guest Takeover. This is episode, 385 here. Congrats, Erik and Erik here. You guys have put on quite the show here. And this is, I am pumped for this because, I myself, just to give your audience a quick little intro here, joined the industry really not too long ago. Thought it was an exciting time to join automotive because of all the changes going on, right? Between, ride subscription services, ride hailing, electrification of vehicles, and now online shopping. I thought it was really coming pretty fast at dealers from all places. So I joined this company called Moto Insight. And we really look to help these dealers link all aspects of that customer journey, right? Connect that at-home shopping experience to the showroom visit. So really an exciting time and an honor to help these dealers navigate this transition. But like I mentioned, very new to the industry, and it's been absolutely amazing to learn from guys like you. In fact, this was the first automotive podcast that I started listening to in order to better understand what's going on in the industry. So wanted to thank you guys. You have been instrumental here in my journey to learn more about automotive. And I actually remember, Herb, back in, it had to have been season 1 there, where I reached out to both you and Erik there, and then you gave me a quick shout out on the podcast. I pretty much ran to work and I was like, guys, you won't believe what just happened. I just got mentioned on the podcast here. And here I am hosting it. So it's been a dream come true, guys. So thank you for myself for educating. And really, I think I can speak on behalf of the community for what you guys are doing here with the Dealer Talk podcast.
Hey, man, thank you so much, dude. Yeah, when we thought about putting this episode together, we had a couple people reach out. But, I was talking to Erik about it. I was like, dude, we got to get Arthur to do it because, you're the first person to show us love online and stuff. And it just... I don't know, man. It just made sense. So we're glad it's you, brother.
And it's important to say that because, and I feel about this very strongly. I think about it. I dwell a lot. I think about it a lot. But it's the young bucks. It's the young bucks just coming into the industry that, quite frankly, they're gonna take us into the future, and they're gonna be the ones to save the industry. So it is just. It's cool that we have this kind of engagement. I was on Facebook or something like that, and there was a gentleman that was asking, hey, listen, I'm new to the auto industry, and I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but I'm new to the auto industry, and I'm curious about is there any podcasts you recommend? And somebody, it was Welsh. It was Sean Welsh. He recommended Dealer Talk, and I, if there were tears within me, I would have teared up right there. It was incredible. I thought that was wonderful, man. That was wonderful.
Yeah, that's amazing, guys. So I'm glad we could make this happen today. But really, what I was hoping to start with, and I'm sure you mentioned it throughout a couple podcasts, but I want to get behind your why. I mean, you guys have done something awesome here. I think you've created a quite a nice community of dealers and vendors, and really trying to educate all of us in terms of not making the same mistakes and moving forward on the right end. So I want to know what keeps you guys going, creating this podcast here. What keeps you up at night? What keeps you waking up in the morning to want to go ahead and really continue to create and drive this dealer talk community? So maybe you start off with Erik there.
Well, the why for me is I just wanted to have or be able to be a part of a new, and quite frankly, our input is not as important as the information that we seek out, right? So I wanted to make sure we created something where we were asking the people who are in the field right now, the game changers, asking them questions, real car guy questions, right? And getting real car guy answers. So it was just neat to be involved in the aspect where people just tell us the truth. They don't try and dumb it down. They're just coming with straight, dealer talk. That's exactly how it is. Just straight car guy lingo that was easy to understand and hopefully digestible to the community. So I mean, that's kind of the fire that keeps me on going. I want to be able to present relevant information that betters the community. I mean, that's me.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of twofold, right? So I've said this multiple times, but it started out initially as a selfish project, right? Because obviously I consult with dealers and you have no intention of becoming a next podcaster. So having these conversations is educational for me. It's something that I take with me into the field when I consult with decision makers. So to have a platform where I can have these amazing people with these awesome experiences and just kind of learn from those conversations, that's huge. The other reason is, and this is a thought that I've had for a while, probably, kind of dating back to my Cox Automotive days, but used to have these amazing conversations with amazing people, and everything's happening behind closed doors, right? And so, the kind of the idea for the podcast was an opportunity for me to kind of put those conversations out there in the open and have a lot of people kind of benefit from that information. Because, I find that there's a lot of, there's just a lot of amazing people in the industry, man. And having some sort of platform where we can kind of shine the light on those folks is, to me, it's just extremely valuable. It's right for the time, right? Technologically speaking. I mean, we have these amazing platforms.
I love that.
Yeah, we have these amazing platforms available to us. And I think that this is just the next logical step in kind of in the evolution of where we're at. So
awesome. No, thank you guys for sharing that. And I think it, gives us a better understanding of why you guys wanted to do this in the first place. And like I said, I think you're creating quite the community here. So that's awesome to be a part of that. So to kind of bring it back to, I guess what I've been hearing from a lot of these conferences and conversations I've been having, a lot of it seems to be about that customer experience, right? Or becoming more customer centric. And I think what's happening really for retail across any industry is we're seeing a change that's maybe in the past it's been product centric, supply chain driven, and now we're seeing a change into one that's a little bit more customer centric, right? Putting that customer in the center of that experience, giving them control of the process. And I think that's tough for any industry to transition into. So would you guys say that's something similar happening in automotive? And if so, maybe how are you guys helping navigate that change there?
Well, I'd say that, and man, it's kind of weird for me to say this again, because I said it so many times during season 2, but it's just right for your comment. But we have this sort of a buzzword right now in the automotive industry, and that's experience. And everybody's like, oh, it's the experience. We got to give the customer a good digital experience. We got to give the customer a good, in-store experience. But when it comes to actually performing on that, when it comes to the specifics of it, there's just really not a lot of that happening, And the reason I say that is because I go to many, 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 many stores. I'm in 5 different states, and I don't see any differentiation. conversation. It's just not there. You know what I mean? So it's very hard for me to kind of hear people talk about the experience when I don't see that happening. And here's what's crazy about that. It's very easy to do, because if you just switch your process you just tweak it just a little bit, that's different. It's different than everybody else. You know what I mean? And I don't know what that is. I was at a store that kind of impressed me, where they had valet parking for their service department. And I know it's not like a crazy concept, but dude, you don't see that a lot, right? So if I'm a customer and I'm going to get my car serviced, and there's a valet that's picking up and dropping off and then arranging my shuttle and all that stuff, those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. It's different. It's customer specific. Yet I don't see a lot of us doing that.
Yeah. So I agree to a point, because I mean, my conversation with my guys is that what we sell is, we don't sell cars. We don't sell metal. We sell perceptions. And as long as we're really good at selling the perception, because the fact is, when a customer comes in, if they perceive they had the best deal of their life, then you know what, we get the privilege of being able to do it again. But if they come in and they perceive they had just the worst experience of their life, then they're not coming back. So I mean, I'm hypersensitive to making sure that my people are aware of the perception of the customer. And you know what? I encourage them to tweak those moments too, to think outside the box, to do those things that are unexpected, personal attention, and kind of coupling it to the customers themselves specifically. So, I mean, it's not an easy game, nor should it be, but, I've said it from day one, service is the key. So I want to make sure that we're serving, when it comes from the selling aspect, we're serving the customers as best that we can. And a lot of that stems from, making sure that we're selling the perception of the experience. I mean, the customer goes away feeling, oh, so incredible. And so, I mean, that's really ultimately what I encourage our guys to do. And I think if you're good in this industry, that's what you should be trying to do anyways. I mean, if we ever get caught up in a game where it's just a numbers game, and we forget about there's actual emotions, peaks and valleys involved, then, well, we're going to lose, but deservedly so. We're going to live deservedly so.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too, really quick, is, Erik, remember we had Ed French on the show? And that was one of the questions that I asked him, man, and his answer just kind of blew my mind, dude. He said, it's very hard to change a process that made you a millionaire, right? And that's really stuck with me, man, because that makes perfect sense. Think about it. You can't walk into a dealership and talk to a decision maker and be like, you got to do this, and that, because that's outdated. That doesn't work. The times are different. They're going to be like, dude, I built an empire off of this. So you can't tell me that this does not work. You know what I mean? So there's that whole thing in the background too happening that, dude, it makes perfect sense. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? But it's not that those things don't work, is that the times are changing. And so there's got to be some sort of, adoption or adaptation rather of where we are now, and more importantly, where we're going to go. Because when you think about it, this technology deal, the internet and stuff, if you look at it just from the automotive perspective, it's super young. I mean, we're talking 10, maybe 15 years where it's really been, looked at and considered. But man, that's still, it's a baby in comparison to where it's going to go. You know what I mean?
Well, think about this too. I mean, I think that what he was talking about, the money's already been made. I think you're exactly right. I think the problem is, and just hear me out when I say this, the problem is that, or the reality is that, we as human beings, we just don't live long enough. I mean, if we had a lifespan of 300 years on average that we lived, then of course we'd be hyper aware of what's going on in the industry and easily change those things. But when the cash has already made money in the bank, look, man, I don't give a shit how things are changing. I've already got my money made, man. The house is paid for. I'm out of here. Ain't no big deal. You guys figure it out. I mean, that mentality is boy, that mentality is missing the opportunity of the shift.
Yeah, and it's funny you guys mentioned that Ed French episode there, because I thought that was, oh man, full of nuggets. And I know the one quote that he brought up was there's two ways to go bankrupt, right? Gradually and suddenly. And I think it's tough to look at it in a way that, like you mentioned, if this process is making me millions, why the heck do I have any motivation to change? I know what I'm doing, but I mean, if you want to look at something like Carvana, which I believe Ed brought up in that episode as well, I mean, a couple of years back, these guys weren't selling anything. And now they've made a brand and a name for themselves, picking at certain friction points within the dealership process and literally creating campaigns about buying a car doesn't suck.
They're number 8 in the nation.
It's insane. So,
Well, and
yeah, go ahead.
look at sorry to interject, Matt, but look, you brought up a good point there. Look at what Ed said too. He said, last year, I think they were up 100,000 units. Where do those units come from? They didn't come from thin air, right? They came from the retail environment. Those are people that would have bought at a retail, physical location that did not do that. So you definitely got to be paying attention. And I would be a little concerned with that because, I mean, if they continue to grow like that, that's not a good sign, right?
Yeah, I think it should put. I mean, to me, I thought that was huge, right? In terms of them not selling any cars a couple years back, and like you said, they moved 100K units this past year. I think they're on track to double, and their CEO has their eyes set on 2 million, I believe, and that's the goal. And he sees that being very real because he doesn't even think a lot of the population there is familiar or used to buying a car in a Carvana way. So that kind of brings me back, Erik, to one question that I had there, where you talked about the perception of a good experience. So maybe if you could give us some examples of what you're doing there, but maybe why people even perceive Carvana to be a better experience compared to that dealership, or why do you think people are gravitating towards that? Obviously, it's a small portion of the market, but from your perspective as a dealer, and then we'll get to you, Herb, I was curious why you think, there's a perception there that Carvana is easier or maybe even better than a car dealership visit.
For a couple of things, okay. Number one, Carvana, their system and how it's affecting the industry. I don't know if you guys are paying attention or not, but AutoNation, that's the king of the industry. AutoNation actually had a program going on in Louisiana where they were basically matching the type of system that Carvana has, and now they're going to go ahead and apply it to other dealerships. So I mean, it's just something that's coming, right? It's something that's coming, and the reason why it's so effective. I had a conversation with there was a wholesaler came into my office last week and talking about, hey, listen, this whole Carvana thing where, it's all done online and whatnot, and there's no quote unquote personal experience. It won't last. I said, well, why would you make that statement? He said, well, because, this is how you and I grew up in the car business. I said, but you're failing to miss the point. He says, well, what's the point? I said, the point is that we've come and gone. The reality is that the people who are coming online now to purchase vehicles are very tech savvy. They're used to buying these things from afar, all through their phone digitally, and there's not a whole lot of interaction with any other people at the stores. So I mean, the younger generation in mass are coming to bear in the market. So the industry has to change. That's why. It has nothing to do with you and I. It has everything to do with the younger generation and how their buying habits are. That's why it's changing. That's why That's why it will change. And that's why I've always said, the the auto industry and how to quote unquote save it from where it's going, it's not yours or my discussion to have, because it's some 15-year-old that has just a seed of an idea that will bloom into how the industry is shaped and formed. It's not us. It's going to become, it's the kids that are coming online that'll change our whole. I mean, experience. You talked about perception and how we fight to achieve that. My whole life I've lived my life where I believe in a warm handshake and just being ultimately me face to face, whether you like me or not. So I just encourage people to always, you have to understand my business model is tiny. I'm talking minute compared to the big boys of the industry. So I'm lucky in so many ways where my community is so small and we've been involved in the community for so long that it to be able to walk out and greet customers personally, face to face, with a warm smile and being the way that I am, it's very easy for me. It's very natural for me to make people feel very comfortable. Welcome to our home concept. So that's how we personally do it, and it's been effective. And I can see the shift in the people that I have lucky enough to work with me. So that's just how we sell cars. But again, my dealership's so small that it's a little bit selfish, and I'm way lucky because it is such a small dealership that it's not comparable to like a Vegas or a Denver market. But I'm lucky that way, and I don't take it for granted.
Yeah, and Herb, if maybe you want to chime in terms of that perception of the experience, or why you think people are gravitating towards this message that Carvana's sending out, right? That it's a frictionless process. Why do you see, some of the industry maybe gravitating towards that? Although it's a small market, I mean, they do seem to be increasing their sales every year, and I think they're on track to double it this year as well, right?
Yeah. So here's my take on it, dude. It's different, right? And I think that in itself, it's a novelty, right? Because it's just, how do I say it? It's just a different way of buying a car, right? And I think that customers, I don't know, they kind of dig that, you know what I mean? Or if nothing else, it's a different way to experience that. So I think that in itself has some sort of weight. I don't think it's a lot because, I mean, look where we're at. I mean, like you said earlier, it's a small fraction of the automotive industry, right? When you look at the pie in itself, it's just a small chunk. My concern with that is what are we doing right now to kind of not mimic, but combat that? Because Carvana is going to do what they're going to do. I mean, we've had companies like Vroom and all these others that did not make it, right? But what about if somebody big like an Amazon gets in there or something like that, and we're not prepared for that, right? So that's kind of like what I see with somebody like Carvana. I'm not really sure that that's going to disrupt the industry per se. And when I talk about disruption, I talk a la Blockbuster, where dealers are gone forever, sort of a deal, right? And that's what I really, when people talk about disruption, it kind of makes me laugh a little bit, because they're talking about like, this disrupted the automotive industry. No, it hasn't. I mean, where are we not doing the things that we've always done? That's true disruption. I mean, this is a different way of doing it, but it hasn't disrupted anything, because we're still, at large masses, we continue to buy cars the way that we've always bought them, right? So, so for me, it's more of a, how are we taking a look at these players, right? And more importantly, what are we doing to prepare internally at the dealership level to combat those things? Or if somebody like not to get completely, radical and crazy here, but what if Apple gets into the car buying business or selling business or something like that, or an Amazon or something, you know what I mean? Where they really kind of turn the model on its head or something to that effect. And, we've had these opportunities to kind of prepare or to kind of tweak our experience, and we kind of haven't taken advantage of that. And not to say that that's all, right? Because I have seen some dealers that are super creative and they are doing things differently. But I'm talking, when I make these comments, these generalizations, I'm talking about, the large, as a whole, right? Because like I said, I see a lot of dealerships, and for the most part, it's pretty repetitive what I see. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the differentiation there. I guess my question do you ever kind of make recommendations there, Herb, to some of your dealers as to how they could maybe differentiate their process or make a couple tweaks? And is it in line with maybe what you're seeing within the industry in terms of offering something like a more competitive online experience to get them into the store? Or, I was just curious to see if there was maybe any that you could think of off the top of your head that you've recommended to some of your dealer clients there in terms of differentiation.
Yeah. So, the conversation that I'm kind of having right now is, and I know a lot of dealers hate when I say this, but that's just my vision. The Best Buy kind of an experience, right? Where you have a trained professional that talks about specifics, does the test drive. And then when the customer is ready to take that next step, then you bring the professional salesperson out to kind of work the deal. But where that person who comes out is the person, right? There's no handoffs. There's no, we got to put you into finance. We got to put you into this. No, that's the person that's going to walk through the whole entire, once that conversation is had with that greeter, if you will, that's going to talk kind of like they do at Best Buy, right? About the specifics of the vehicle and the technology, and they'll do the test drive and they qualify that customer. Once that one handoff happens, that's it. Then you're with that salesperson all the way through the end. And I go back to this episode that we did with Ali Rita, number one salesperson in the world for 2017, had like 1,500 plus units. He had a month that he sold like 200 plus vehicles. I mean, it's attainable and it's achievable because he did it, right? And one of the things that he talked about that he's really, it's really part of his process and it's what's really allowed him to be as successful as he has is that concept of, hey, I'm with this customer all the way through. They don't see anybody else. It's me all the way through the process. And I think we need to go to something like that, where we're, now that is a true experience, right? That's different. That's something that customers are not used to, right? We go into the dealership to buy a car with the expectation that we're going to be there for 5 hours, that we're going to see, 3 or 4 different people, that we're going to get pressured into signing a deal, all these things. So that's what we need to kind of eradicate. We need to get rid of that perception that customers have.
That's amazing you'd say that because it's exactly what we're doing in my store. I didn't even click till you said that, but that's exactly what we do. I mean, the customer stays with the salesperson in their office the whole time, one person, one face. I mean, I might come in there to greet them every once in a while to come overcome a hurdle, but other than that, they stay in one location where they're comfortable, and we come to them. They don't come to us; we come to them. So, yeah, I think you're right on point with that. You're absolutely right on point with that.
No, that's great. I think that makes sense from an experience perspective too. I have heard of who is it? It might even be the Walser Automotive Group that I think they've done the kind of one price, one sales rep all the way through, and they've been doing that maybe for 20 plus years and have seen tremendous success there too. So, Erik, in your dealership there, are your sales reps allowed to kind of talk F&I and go all the way through with them?
No,
or is that what you're transitioning to?
We encourage it. So, I mean, I just want them to have a lingo. I just want them to have a conversation with these folks. What are you thinking? I mean, are you interested in protection plans? I mean, this is just a natural conversation. I want the customer on their terms to just talk. What are you thinking about this vehicle this time? Is there something you'd like to see different? Are there struggles? Are there hurdles? I mean, these are the products that we have available. Are there ways that you think that might be a benefit for you? I mean, that's literally as simple as I can make it. The whole idea is I want them really to have the best experience. So I want it to be a very non-confrontational. I will not have any kind of ire or distaste. We just can't afford it. We just can't afford it. It's just a very comfortable situation where we bring up opportunities that are available to the customer. We assume a lot of things in our penciling. Hey, this includes this, or this includes this. Of course, you can see the benefit there. So, I mean, it's when when I say we, my finance person and I, we encourage that. We encourage our salespeople to be on point for that stuff, and we pay them accordingly because, if they're the ones breaking down the hurdles and doing those, helping us move the needle as far as profit, then we owe it to them to pay them a little extra. So yeah, we 100% encourage all that stuff as a natural process of selling a vehicle.
That's amazing to hear, because I think a lot of dealerships, from what I've heard at least, and listening to you guys, are looking to explore that type of model. So I think you can maybe be the flag bearer there, Erik, in terms of how to bring that into the sales process slowly, right? By just allowing them to have that conversation, but also incentivizing them. I think that's great. So,
well, I'll be honest with you. It's been the journey of this podcast that has made this realization. Again, having that conversation with Ali Rita about how he sells cars. I mean, look, when you're talking to the number one salesperson in the world, you kind of have to pay attention. So that was always forefront in my thinking. And it, as soon as he was talking about, you're expecting this hard charging, metal eating dynamo to get on the podcast with you, and this guy was just he was just as nice as a summer breeze. I mean, the way he sold cars, it's just it made sense. I mean, it's about momentum. But his transition of being able to invite customers to come back, continue to visit with them, made so much sense to me that it clicked in my head, and it totally changed my approach on how, quote unquote, selling cars. It's really more of a allowing customers to buy experience versus trying to sell them on something. So I mean, it's a home run approach, and it's where we're going to go. We're going to tell you all about it. We're going to go all the way with this one.
I love it. So I guess along the lines of that, is that, I was going to ask you guys, in your opinion, what is the number one thing dealer can do to protect themselves based on a lot of the changes we're seeing? Is that what you guys would recommend then, to try and explore this one sales rep model, or is there anything else that they can do to protect themselves from really any changes that you guys are seeing in the industry here?
I mean, there's really no way to kind of answer that, because I think that a lot of it has to do with are you looking at your business from a micro level, right? I think a lot of these consulting conversations and a lot of these, even the tools that we have in the industry today, like the V-Autos and the third party listings and all these things, they're trying to look at the business as a macro, right? And that's great, but you need micro information in order to make accurate decisions and shifts, right? So, for example, let's look at Erik's store. Geographically, I would say challenged area, smaller community. But if you're looking at their business from a macro, you're going to lose every time. You're going to make the wrong decisions because it just doesn't fit. You know what I mean? So it's more of kind of being in tune, right, with your market, and really becoming an industry of your own business and understanding the consumer behavior that's happening at that micro level. So one thing that's really interesting that I'm noticing in the business right now is kind of the passing of the baton, right, within management. And you have a lot of these younger managers. In particular, I'm seeing this mostly in the used car sector. But you're seeing these new car managers come into the business that have never ever bought a car or appraised a car or done anything with the car that's not tied to some sort of tool or widget at their store. So obviously they're very dependent on these widgets and tools, but the problem is, again, that the information that they're passing along is macro, and you're not making those micro decisions that are going to help you move the needle effectively, because you're buying these cars that these tools are telling you that are going to move quicker, and they're just sitting in your lot. And the cars that could have moved, you'd passed on because the tool told you there weren't good choices. And again, it's just, it's just hurting it's just hurting the business, right? I think that we're making a lot of decisions based on this macro data, and it's not really converting. It's not really being effective, and I think it's a little irresponsible. And I said this in one of our episodes recently. I think it was the episode with Dimitri where we talked about the auction. I don't know. That's my take on that. But I mean, if you were to say one, what's the one bullet sort of a deal? I'd say pay attention to your market. Look at your business at a micro level. Understand what your consumers are doing in your market, and then make those decisions based on that. Obviously, use the tools, use the data, but you gotta interpret it, right? You gotta utilize that so it makes sense in your specific location.
In your opinion, Erik, what's maybe one thing that dealers can do to protect themselves based on a lot of the changes we're seeing in the industry today?
Things that dealerships can do to protect themselves. Well, get up out of their chair. This is always going to be a human interaction system where people connect with other people. It's handshakes, you know what I mean? It's a warm smile. It's caring. I believe in that so strongly that it is service. I don't know any other way to try and encapsulate an idea, but it is really service. And I'm not talking service from turning wrenches and doing oil changes. I'm talking about servicing the customer in such a manner that it doesn't allow for them to think of any other place to go should they have any car needs. I'm just talking outside of the box. You have to be aware of that shit. But if you think that from sitting in your chair, typing away, handing out 4 squares here, handing out 4 squares there is going to get the job done, well, you're just confused, bro. You're just confused. And I can't wait for the fact, if in fact you do think that way, I can't wait. I'm my hands are sweating thinking about it. I can't wait until you're fired, dead and gone. I'm dead serious about that. Your shit does not need to be in the industry. You just need to be buried, just like with your ideas. That's boy, I got really strong there at the end, but that's I feel about that.
Dark,
I'm sorry, dude, but that is it. The customers are the key. It ain't numbers. It ain't metal. It's the people. Get out there and interact. Yep, that's what I got.
And I'm glad you bring that up, Erik, because I think that's a distinct advantage that dealers have over even companies like Carvana, right? Where they might just market the experience, but it's still a huge investment on there and that they're going to make and that they want to be guided through that process. So I think Carvana's biggest strength could be their biggest weakness, right? Because they really don't have the personnel to take a customer through that guided experience, make sure that the car fits with them. They are offsetting a lot of that to the customer, which can work in some cases. But I think that, the ability that you guys have to create that relationship, to greet them with a warm handshake and smile there, and to take them through one of their biggest purchases is a huge advantage over companies like, let's say Amazon or Carvana or whatnot.
Well, listen, here's the thing. And Herb mentioned about the it's new. You know what? I never really thought of it in that sense, but I think that's exactly right on point. It's different. It's a fad. And what happens with fads is that the playing field evens out. When everybody's involved in the new, what people will tend to go with that fad, you know what I mean? But they'll revert back to serve. I mean, we still have service departments, for Christ's sake. I mean, the service department is where everybody's got to utilize how to purchase a car. I try and explain this to my sales staff as best that I can, but buying a vehicle is literally probably it's going to be less than 5% of a dealership's experience with customers. Having said that, the rest of that pie encapsulates, how are we treating that customer from there on out? So, even though this is new on how to buy cars, you still get to win if in fact you have you got to figure out how to take care of them after the fact. I mean, sales is not the thing that's going to save the auto industry. It's just not. It's going to be the servicing of that customer from there on out. And I'm talking, body shops. I'm talking details. I'm talking parts. I'm talking the actual service department. But selling a car, I mean, holy shit, anybody can do that. You better figure out how to do it better than anybody else. Or that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
All right, perfect. And no, I think that leads us nicely into, we've been talking a lot about the mindset, right, that you can have and getting up out of your chair, but maybe let's switch to a little bit more tactical conversation here. So I know we've talked about this in the past, but Erik, I wanted to congratulate you here on record. Very exciting that you got promoted to GSM of your store there. And maybe this is fitting here, right? Because we talked about this hypothetical situation that maybe you're brought into a store here and it's up to you to turn around as quickly as possible. So you brought up a really cool idea last time we spoke. I'm curious to see if it's maybe something similar that you're looking to do in your role here. But yeah, maybe you're given this nice budget here, and in the short term, you're asked to turn things around at a dealership. And we'll get your take on this in just a sec, but maybe from a dealership perspective or a GSM perspective, what would you do with that budget in the short term, and where would you focus your energy there, Erik, to turn that store around?
Well, okay, so let's go ahead and let's do a little backstory here. The original question is that if I had a budget, I believe it was $50,000 to spend on media, on a media spend. Is that correct? Do you agree with that?
Sorry, could you say it again?
I say I think we had an idea where I was asked specifically, hey, listen, if you had, say, a $50,000 media spend budget, where would you spend it and how? That was the original question, correct?
That was the original question, yeah.
Okay, so having said that, I don't have a $50,000 media buy. So I'm not there yet. I mean, hypothetically, of course, I'd take that money if I was making enough of a profit that I had the expense account of $50,000 a month. Of course, I'd create a media market. I would just make us the center of attention for my small little store. But we're just not there. We're just not there as of yet. It's not to say that we won't be. And thank you so much for the acknowledgement of the new position. What's great about this is that you talked about what gets me fired up every day is that, I love being front and center. I mean, quite frankly, I just, I take on my peers in life and kind of have a private conversation with them, even though they don't have to be there, and say, okay, look, you talked all this shit. Now go out and produce. So what gets me fired up every day is that I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to produce for my people, to see if in fact my ideas, I can bring them into fruition. And hey, I'll be honest with you. I'm brand new to the position. I've been in there less than a couple months now, but I will tell you this is that the positive response as far as sales and profits and the community within the store has been absolutely positive. But I have some other ideas, and I don't have the big media spend as of yet. But if I had a big media budget, of course, I just make us the center of attention. I take those monies. I create a 3-man team or a 2-man team, and I would go expose other businesses within our community, and then take those video files and acknowledgments of those other businesses and put it right on our page. But we're not there yet. We're not there. We got quite frankly, we got a long ways to go. But look, Arthur, I'm humbled and privileged to be able to be in charge of the sales team. We're gonna find out what I can do. It's pretty cool, man.
Hey, we'll have to come back and check in on that then, Erik. How the whole media partner thing's going there. But Herb, maybe if from your perspective, in terms of you're given this big media budget and you're tasked with turning around a store, maybe some tactical things that you would do there.
Yeah. So again, I look at the micros of the store, and I look at the database, right? I think that we, as dealerships, we pay a lot of money to get new clients, right? To go into the business and get new people, and we don't spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort into working the customers that have already said yes to us, right? The customers that continue to come to our store month after month to service their vehicle, the customers that have purchased 1, 2, 3, 4 vehicles from us, and really kind of, utilizing that database, right? That's super valuable and so underutilized. The way I look at it is this: the market's going to do what the market's going to do, right? I mean, the pie is the pie, folks. It's not getting any bigger. It is what it is. So the only way for you to get market share is to steal it from your competitors, right? And that's a very expensive thing to do. But you have these customers in your database that purchased a vehicle from you, that they're servicing their vehicle with you, that they've said yes to you over and over and over again. You send them an email and they'll consume that information. And what does that cost you at a dealership level? You know what I mean? So I would look at the micros. I look at the database. I do a lot of omni-channel campaigns with traditional, and digital mix. Like I would do direct mail. I would do email campaigns. I do SEM, but all on an omni-channel type of a situation. So the messaging has the same feel, the same look. Social media is another one that I miss. I want to make sure I say that social media would be a part of that. But instead of doing these 10, 20,000, people, extravagant, super expensive mailers and combinations of digital, I would go small. I'd look at the customers that have purchased their vehicle 3 years ago, that continue to service their vehicle with me, that have 50,000 miles or more, that are maybe 10 miles in radius from the dealership. And I'd target those specific customers with digital, social, and email, direct mail campaigns, and get in front of them that way. I think omnichannel is the way to go. I just read an article recently, actually, on Automotive News, where CarMax was talking about their omnichannel strategies and how they're going to that sort of an approach, when it comes to communicating with customers. So, so spend time on your DMS, look at the micros, and understand that, these are true opportunities to actually generate new business, because those customers are not purchasing at your store, but they're also not purchasing at your competitors. So it's a unique way to really create new business.
No, I love that. That's excellent there on the tactical side of things. So I know we're coming up on our time here, gentlemen. We could probably talk for hours on end and just learning from you guys. But I know that one question you guys always ask your guests that I'm hoping you can educate us as well. Where do you see the automotive industry trending in the next 5 years, and why?
Eric, you want to start? Or
Nope, you're going to start, fella.
All right, brother. Okay, so where do I see the industry in the next 5 years? Obviously, lots of change, on multiple fronts within the automotive industry. I will say, I'm not going to be the doom and gloom guy, so I don't think the dealerships are going anywhere. I think that, customers still need to service their vehicles. So I think that that's going to be, an area of growth and focus for a lot of decision makers is going to be the fixed ops side of the house. Where we got things like, rideshare and autonomous vehicles and that sort of deal. So I suspect that that's gonna play a role in fixed operations. As a matter of fact, it's one of those conversations that I'm starting to have with my stores now, which is like, hey, create some sort of a program for these rideshare customers, because these are customers that could be potentially high customers, to go after. Think about how much they drive and how often they're servicing their vehicle. So having some sort of strategy in play for that is going to be, I think it's going to be part of the next 5 years, some sort of maybe mobile service or mobile cleaning or something to that effect. Front side of the house, I think a lot of it's going to go towards used cars. Obviously, we're seeing a little bit of a contraction on the new car side of things. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But, when I mention new car, it's not because I think that something's going to happen from the OEM level. I just think that used cars have more money. there's more profit in there. And so it's just smart to kind of focus your efforts where you're making the most dollars, right? I think experience-wise, that's going to continue to be a topic of conversation. I also think that, or I kind of hope that we see some sort of concierge type of a service or something. I'll steal this from the Ed French conversation where it's like 3 levels of service. So do it yourself. I want a little bit of assistance, or I want the full, the full-blown experience, right? Something that kind of accommodates that in some way, shape, or form. I think that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing. But look, I think that as far as an industry, as far as a business, I think that we're in a great place to be. I'm excited every day to just be a part of this industry because I'm seeing change, right? And I think it's a good time to be a part of the automotive industry in whatever capacity, and just kind of be a part of the change and the transformation rather. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And Erik, yourself?
Next 5 years, because it's such a small window. I think that what we're going to see is just a continuation of a lot more activity on social media. I think what we've talked about today, as far as the sales process and customer retention, that's more of how I view a dealership, but more of like a fixed ops implementation. But what's going to capture the attention and what's going to, I think, where we're going to see the next wave happening is really the evolution of recognized salespeople. I think that we're going to see a lot more content creation. Not only for the salespeople, where they're going to kind of become stars online, right? Which is interesting to state about that is that if they're good enough at, like this dude, this bow tie dude, right? I mean, he's kind of a recognizable name in the auto industry right now. And what's interesting about that is that that's actually kind of made him. It's almost like his videos are almost his resume, right? He can take that attention and walk into the next dealership and get hired on that aspect alone. But I mean, if you want to be effective, I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see a lot more content creation from not only salespeople, but the service departments. I think probably the body shops, the detail shops, the parts department. I think you're going to see just a lot more content creation trying to capture the attention, and those they're good enough, they're going to stand out. That's just in the next 5 years, because again, that is such a small window. I think I see that just becoming blown up. I think there's going to be a lot of competition right there.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this has been a complete honor for me. Like I said, this was the first podcast in the automotive industry that I listened to, and it's crazy to be able to guest host it today. So thank you for myself, for your community. I'm sure that they continue to get a lot of value from this. And I really appreciate you guys building out this Dealer Talk community and allowing me to be a part of it there.
Hey, man. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the support. We definitely appreciate that. And thanks for doing our first Takeover episode, man. We're coming with a little bit of a twist in season 3 when it comes to that. So we'll make some announcements later on. But I want to take the opportunity right now to just give a couple of shout outs. Obviously we're taking a little break here until we start season 3. So I just want to give a shout out to everybody that's been a part of the show in some capacity. We really appreciate your guys' time in particular, coming on the show and sharing your insights to us. That's everything. So thank you so much. Obviously the audience members, we really appreciate your support, your continued support. Just want to reiterate that we will be back for season 3. Kind of thinking that October will be our kind of kickoff time. So, and again, we got a little bit of some things that we're thinking, and Erik and I are going to start talking about here soon about just kind of changing things up a little bit. So I'm excited to see what that evolves into. And man, it's been an awesome 2 seasons. We've had a lot of fun. I know I've learned a lot. I'm sure Erik has as well. yeah, so, thank you. Just thanks for your continued support, because obviously, that's what keeps us going. That's what pushes us and motivates us.
Yeah. So once again, Herb Anderson has actually stole my thunder. He went ahead and one up me. So I have really nothing relevant to say except for thank you so much, Arthur Castillo, for inviting us and being involved the way you have, and thank you for the support. But as far as any other messages beyond that, I have nothing, because Herb Anderson has actually, yeah, he took it all. I got nothing.
I'm sorry, man.
No, you're not. You're really not. Okay. Right now, you're smiling and laughing at the same time, and I'm on this end just suffering. Okay. So, yeah, this has been a great experience. Can you tell from the sniveling in my voice?
All right, man. Well, that's all we got for today. Arthur, thanks again. Great episode. And as usual, we'll talk later.
So you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much. Just want to remind everybody to go to the website at dealertalk.biz. Leave us your questions. Give us your feedback. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk later.